Hello, P5 students. Welcome again to this another video of our Math 5 class. And this is Miss Claire. Welcome to chapter 16. It talks about the statistical enquiry. In this video or chapter, you will learn 3 lessons. We have planning and enquiry with statistical questions, recording, organizing, and representing data, and identifying patterns and draw conclusions. Okay, P5, are you ready to learn these new topics? Come on, let's start. Okay, I have here a picture of a farmer and 2 children. So they are going to collect data on how to grow more and sweeter tomatoes. So how to answer this question? So they need to collect data like such as sweetness of tomatoes, number of tomatoes collected, and the height of tomatoes. So if they have this data, they need to choose the graph or the chart to use to show its data and use graph to answer this question. So what are the characteristics of different graphs and charts and graphs? So from the previous chapter, children will learn different graphs, right? So in this chapter, those lessons are still connected, so we will learn more about those lessons. Okay, P5, stay tuned. Okay, let's start with lesson A, plan and inquiry with statistical questions. Okay, I have here 2 tomato plant. We have plant A and plant B. So look at the 2 tomatoes. What questions can you ask to find out which plant is better? What data should you collect about the plants to answer the question? So some examples of data that can be collected, children, are the height of the plants and the mass of the tomatoes. So what other data can you collect that is not categorical or discrete? Okay, so which tomato plant should the farmer grow? So which plant is the better tomato plant? So we have 2 kinds of tomato here. Super sweet tomato plant and big red tomato plant. So to answer the farmer's questions, we carry out the step 1 in the statistics inquiry cycle. That is identifying the problem and asking questions. So this is our statistics inquiry cycle, children. So we have 4 steps here, and let's take step 1 and we will identify the problem. Okay, so which tomato plant should the farmer grow? So these are the questions. What are the heights of the plants? What is the length of the tomatoes? And what is the mass of the tomatoes? With these 3 questions, we can collect the data with this, the height, the length, and the masses of tomatoes. So the height, length, and mass of tomatoes, we have the values here ranges from 0.9 to 1.5. That is the height of the tomatoes. 15 cm to 18 cm, that is the length of the tomatoes, and 120 grams to 150 grams, that is the masses of the tomatoes. So these data shown are all continuous data. Do you remember continuous data, children? When we have continuous data, what chart or graph we will use? Correct, the histogram. Okay, take note. Let's continue. So what are the types of data? We have 2 types of data. If I take note, we have what we call the categorical or numerical. When we say categorical, take a look here. When you say small tomato, big tomato, the color of the tomatoes, the sweetness of the tomato, or the texture of the tomatoes, that is what we call categorical. When we say numerical, from the word numerical, numbers, but there are 2 types, discrete and continuous. When we say discrete, that is really a specific number. Example, 5 tomatoes are harvested, number of tomatoes in 1 plant, and the number of seeds in 1 tomato. Okay? Then when we say continuous, do you remember continuous? The height of the tomato plant, do you remember? The height always continuing, right? From day 1 to day 2 until, let's say, day 10. Then the length of the tomatoes. As the tomato grows, the length of the tomatoes changes. And also the mass of the tomatoes. And also the amount of time the tomatoes take to ripen. So that is what we call continuous data. So categorical data are descriptive, big or small, sweet or not sweet. Okay, texture, is it rough or smooth? So those are descriptive. Discrete data are whole numbers, take note. And continuous data usually give a range of values, usually are decimal numbers, right? Okay, let's move on to lesson B. record, organize, and represent data. Okay, now, do you remember the different chart and graph that you have learned from chapter 15? So take a look here. We have two types of chart here or bar. We have a bar chart on the left side and we have a waffle diagram. So what percentage do the teenagers like doing puzzle games? How many more teenagers like strategy games than sports games? So children, take a look which one is the better chart to use when we are going to talk about percentage. Yes, it's the waffle diagram because it is seen clearly and very detailed there if that is how many percentage. Okay, now, what part of the bar chart would you look at to answer the second question? Okay, so what part of the waffle diagram also would you like to answer when you answer the first question? So if you know the answer, children, you can share your answer during our class. Okay, I have a problem here. It's still about the tomatoes. We had the super sweet tomato plant. So the farmer wants to grow the tomato plants fast and harvest more tomatoes. So how he will do that? To help the farmer find out the information, we carry out step 2 of the statistics inquiry cycle, and that is choosing the most suitable data representation. Okay, so a table and line graph are chosen to represent the growth of the tomato plants. The faster the plants grow, the faster it grows tomatoes, right? Okay, so we have a table here. We have the days and the height of the plant. And with this table, we can make a line graph for this month. So the line graph shows the height of the plant increases between day 10 to day 90. Then it remains the same until day 100 using a line graph is suitable. Children, even though it talks about height, but look at the height, they are whole numbers. They are not ranges of values. So that's why we are not using the histogram. We only use the line graph. Okay? Next, we have the another type of plant, right? Tomatoes, the big red tomatoes harvested. Okay, now we are going to use a bar chart. A bar chart is chosen to represent the number of tomatoes that are harvested from the tomato plant. So number of tomatoes and number of plants. So the bar chart shows clearly the numbers of tomatoes harvested from the plants. This representation is suitable, right? So we have number of plants and we have the number of tomatoes. Okay, now let's talk about the seeds in big red tomatoes. We are using now a dot plot to represent the number of seeds in one tomato. Okay, so the more seeds a tomato has, the higher the chance of growing more tomato plants, right? So the dot plot shows clearly the number of seeds in the tomatoes. This representation is suitable. So it means to say we have 33. What does it mean? Number of seeds in a tomato. There are two plants that have 33 seeds in one tomato. Okay. Now let's move on to the mass of the tomatoes. Okay. The farmer also wants the tomatoes to be big and sweet. He chooses the most suitable data representations to find out. So he has here what we call a group frequency table. Do you remember this? Look at the mass of the tomatoes. It's only ranges of values, right? Not a specific value. That's why a histogram is chosen to represent the masses of these tomatoes, and it will look like this. See, the data or the mass of the tomatoes are connected. So this histogram clearly shows the number of plants that bore tomatoes with masses in given intervals. So this representation is suitable. Okay, now let's talk about the sweetness of the tomatoes. So sweetness of the tomatoes, what kind of table or diagram we will use? Yes, we can use a Carroll diagram. This one, a Carroll diagram. So there are 9 red tomatoes that are sweet. There are 1 that is red but not sweet. There are 2 not red but sweet. And there are 8 tomatoes that are not red and not sweet. So if we are going to put that in a Carroll diagram, it will look like this, okay? So the Carroll diagram and the waffle diagram show clearly the number of tomatoes according to their sweetness and color. So this representation are suitable. Okay, P5? Okay, let's study lesson C, identify patterns and draw conclusions. Okay, take a look here. The bar chart show the favorite types of breakfast for 130 boys and 130 girls. State two differences between the two graphs. Okay, so what are the differences? What have you noticed in these two bar charts? So if you know the answer, children, if you can cite any differences, share your thoughts during our class. Okay, now let's continue about the lesson or the problem about the two types of tomatoes. So look at this bar charts again. Are there any patterns between the two of them? Okay, what makes you say so? Okay, children, again, share your answer during our class. Okay, let's continue. Let's study now the patterns in graphs. The farmer wants to know more details about the number of tomatoes he can harvest. This will help him plan for growing a new plot of tomato plants. So to help the farmer plan, we carry out step 3 and step 4 in the statistics inquiry cycle by interpreting the data, identifying the patterns and drawing conclusions from the data representation. So the farmer takes all the ripe tomatoes from its plant. So he already harvested. He weighs each tomato to the nearest gram. So take a look. We have the result already. He displays the result in a bar chart below. They show the total numbers of tomatoes harvested for super sweet tomatoes and big red tomatoes. The center of the graph is located at the median. So the spread of a graph shows how much the data varies. And when the data varies a lot, there are more different values of the data, right, children? So take a look here. There are only 5 values here, so it does not vary a lot. But in the second one, in the big red tomatoes, it has more data. So the spread, it spread a lot. It becomes wide. Not like in the super red tomatoes, it's closer or narrow, right? So this is what we call the spread of a graph. Next, describing the shape of a bar chart. The following bar charts, take a look, show the numbers of tomatoes that children picked over 9 days. The mode causes a bump in the data. So look at Ralph's graph. It has no bump. So we cannot say that there is a mode, right? The number of days. Each day has the same number of tomatoes. Not like in Kaz bar chart. What have you seen in Kaz bar chart? There is what we call a bump, right? There is a bump here, this one. Here it bumps like that. Yeah. So it's not level. So the mode, the highest peak, the highest number, the mode of a set of data causes the bump in the graph. Okay, now, so when describing the shape of a graph, look for bumps and trends in the graph. Look at here, it has 2 bumps. Where are the 2 bumps? This one, first bump and the second bump. This is the mode, right? This one, okay? So it has 2 bumps. How about this one? IZ and Eddie's bar chart. What have you observed? There is an upward trend and there is a downward trend. Okay, so this is what we call the trend in the bar chart. Okay, so let's have the dot plots. The farmer also finds out the number of seeds from the tomatoes. To grow a new plot of tomato plants, he collects the seeds from 15 super sweet tomatoes and 15 big red tomatoes. The dot plots below shows the number of seeds for each type of tomatoes. Okay, take a look. Okay, there in the super sweet tomatoes, there is a spread in the data, right? How about in the big red tomatoes? Not really spread a lot. Okay, so this is what can we observe in using the dot plot in between 2 kinds of tomatoes. Next, so let's describe the dot plots. So the farmer described the dot plots using the center, the spread, and the shape. So the median is 35. Let's check. Okay, the median is 35. The middle. Okay, the middle values is 35, correct? Next, we have the data is more spread out in super sweet tomatoes, but in big red tomatoes, less spread. Take a look. Super sweet, more spread out. Okay, correct. More spread out. It's wider here. This one is not really spread out. Next, let's continue. The shape. The data goes up and then down. There is a bump at 35. The mode is 35. And the big red tomatoes, the data goes up and then down. There is a bump at 35 and the mode is 35. So they are the same. So this one is goes up and goes down. There is a mode here and there is one bump, right? This one also goes up, upward, and downward trend. There is a mode here and we have one bump. Okay, so this is how to describe a dot plot. Okay, P5. Now describing again the dot plot. So the farmer sees similarity between the two plots. In both, the data goes up and down, right? And there is a bump at 35. So what difference do you see in the tables? Okay, can you find any differences between the two tables? So you can conjecture or you can find the more possible reasons of the differences in the two data. So take a look. This one, find the differences between these two dot plots. And if you have some questions or if you have some answers, you can share that during our class. Okay, P5? Okay, P5, that's all about statistical inquiry. So remember the four steps in the statistical inquiry cycle. So I will discuss more about this lesson during our class. I hope you'll learn a lot in this video. Thank you for watching, children. And again, stay safe and healthy. God bless everyone and enjoy the rest of the day.